All right, so remember the old TV shows where the mom and dad was sitting at the table, balancing the checkbook, going over the bills. You know, we have to get back to that. From my perspective, okay, in my opinion, the way I see it is that you had the Great Depression and you had the people that lived through that Great Depression. And for me, that was my grandparents, okay? My grandparents lived through the Great Depression. They knew all about saving and keeping everything that you had because you never knew, what was going to happen the next day or the next week. And that's what all those old TV shows depicted, are the people from that era, that generation. Now, my grandparents and the people from those TV shows, they had children. Those children were raised in the 60s and 70s, which was all the flower power era, right? And they completely rejected all the conservative stuff that their parents stood for. They rebelled, right? And those flower children had children. And those flower children had children in the 80s, the 90s, right? And those children are Generation X. And so there's no wonder that Generation X starts doing all this stuff about throwing your money in the air and ball out and wasting crystal and all this kind of stuff, because we've gotten so far away from that conservative fiscal era of those persons that lived through the Great Depression. And so we have to get back to that. We have to get back to balancing our checkbook. We have to get back to looking at our finances. And that was made plainly clear during the housing crisis of 2008. I mean, people were signing contracts and signing loans not knowing what a variable rate was. They really did not know what a variable rate was. They didn't know how high their interest rate could go, and they didn't know how that interest rate would affect their payments or their payoff amount. And so now we have a new generation, the millennials, that are really starting to take a look at their finances. So now we have the sharing economy, right? And all these things that are meant to reduce expenditures, reduce expenses, and save a little bit more, okay? So the easiest way to account for your finances, the easiest way to keep track of them is to try not to spend cash, okay? If you have to use cash, that's fine. You need to figure out a way to separate it. When I was a kid, I did all this stuff just naturally. Like, no one had to tell me. In my bedroom, I had stacks of cash in different places. Not that I had so much money, but because I separated everything, right? So I would have one stack of cash was for my pager, right? I would have one stack of cash was for maybe my lunch or something. One stack of cash over here was for my church tithes. One stack of cash over here was for maybe what the bill? Oh, my rent, right? 'Cause I paid my mom rent, And so I had to keep the cash separated because I had to make sure that I had enough money to take care of those liabilities, to take care of those things. And so if you are dealing with cash, you have to be able to separate it. Even having the cash in different pockets really works. I've used that before, where I have maybe cash in my right pocket, that's for one thing, cash in my back pocket, that's for another thing. But the point is, you have to separate it, okay? This is actually an accounting principle, all right? It's called separation of duties or separation of accounts. And what that simply means is that you have to separate money from other money. If the money is used for this, you have to separate it from money that's used for that, all right? So that's the cash method. It can get complicated. not the best way to go. The easiest thing to do is, like I said before, try not to spend cash. Use a debit card, credit card for everything, okay? And I'm going to go through exactly what this stuff looks like.